The next season on Steve Park's career brings us to the final full-time season he would ever run in Cup Series competition, and it involved a mid-season change and a whole lot not going in favor for Steve Park. And you'll see what happens during the season, but a lot of different circumstances lined up to get him a new ride and away from DEI in the 2003 season. So here is number 4, 2003 for Steve Park's career over at DEI. As you see from this graphic, he did pick up a top 5 this season, one more top 10, as well as 2 poles, 3 laps led only, but a 32nd place finish in points, 27.0 average start, average finish of 26.7, and he also had 1 DNQ throughout the season. We'll talk about that later on in this video. But as we look here, you'll see that it wasn't really that great for Steve Park. Not very showy, not very, not flashy at all. Around the back of the points pretty much all season. And the start of the season was so bad, Daytona and Rockingham don't have anything to talk about, so we'll just skip ahead to Las Vegas. In 3 and 4 in the final lap, Steve Park is running 11th, but as Jimmie Johnson gets spun battling for 8th, Steve Park actually gains this position with the 48 sideways and the grass, and with Johnson not able to get going in time, Park moves up and finishes inside the top 10, so Steve Park gets a top 10 in the 3rd race of the 2003 season after Jimmie Johnson gets spun in 3 and 4 from the 8th position. You can see finally right there, Jimmie gets going, but he ends up finishing in the 11th position, which is last car in the lead lap, so Steve Park would have finished 10th or 11th with this day. And then we move all the way up to Texas, where Steve Park does a self-spin off turn number 4 into the grass. The valance gets a little bit of damage. You'll see right here to the middle of the front of the car. You see right there a little bit of damage to the valance. As you see right here, through 3 and 4, just gets really loose as the zero jack spray got up into the back of him. Park does a self spin, doesn't hit anything except for the grass, so Park actually in good shape to continue on in the race. But then later on, he spins it off of turn number 2 and collects Mike Skinner, who nails the inside wall hard. Park comes down across the racetrack, hits the inside wall as well, as you'll see from this angle. Beneath Kevin Harvick, and he spins the car around, getting loose underneath the 29. He just collects Mike Skinner right there, and then the one spins across the racetrack. Luckily, no one hits Steve Park, but he does impact the inside wall pretty hard, and that is good enough to take him out of the running of the Samsung Radio Shack 500. So right there, as he spins, a wild collision there between Park and Skinner. And once again, there's another look. As Park gets sideways, Skinner gets into him. You'll see Park actually spin around in front of the whole field, and somehow everyone able to dodge him, but he can't dodge the inside wall. And then Talladega, the big one, happened early on. Park was up front, and you'll see right there that yellow number 1 gets by Ryan Newman, gets by Mark Martin barely to keep himself in the race. So Steve Park actually keeps himself in the race by missing this huge crash barely. I mean, he barely missed this crash. You'll see from this angle just how close it was for Steve Park. As they went in to turn number 1, there's Park on the outside, just misses Ryan Newman and just misses Mark Martin. Great job by Park there. And then he ends up, a few restarts later, getting outside of Michael Waltrip for the race lead at Talladega. So he battles with his teammate Michael Waltrip side by side. And he's thinking about a little redemption in terms of what fans think about in terms of DEI.
Sometimes people forget there's 3 DEI cars. He says this weekend I'm going to make them remember.
Maybe it'll be the 24 car this weekend. No, there's already a 24 car.
Let's see, that's 8 plus 15 plus 1.
Well, Steve Park did do a good job racing up at the front, especially battling with teammates Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Michael Waltrip, as he's battling with Waltrip right here for the race lead down into the tri-oval. He has the outside lane, a push from Ward Burton behind, and out of the tri-oval, Steve Park leads, I believe, his first lap of the season here at Talladega. He actually led one at Texas before, the race before. He leads one here today at Talladega. You'll see him block low there down the backstretch in front of Ward Burton. And you see Ward try to get to the inside there. Park blocks him off. But here is what DEI had in terms of Park's engine program for this race.
Well, Mike, remember back to Daytona, Steve Park had a very fast race car, then twin 125 qualifier, but had an overheating problem. They estimated they spent over $100,000 trying about 20 different variations of ductwork. They feel like they found out what the problem was. Richie Gilmore, the head engine builder, told me that Park has the latest, greatest engine package that the entire DEI Armada will be running at Daytona in July. Dale Jr. had a different one today. Michael Waltrip had a different one, but Park will have the latest and greatest today. And they feel like that's what the entire team, if all goes well. Remember, It's not an R&D package. They feel like this is the best package they've got.
At All Club, Park wins the pole for the race, and at the green flag, he does jump out nicely, but Tony Stewart from third gets the even better restart, and he puts Park middle of 3 wide lap 1, so Park from the pole will fall back through the middle lane outside the front 5, and right here through 1 and 2 with Ryan Newman to his outside and a car to his inside, it's Rusty Wallace. He's sandwiched between the Penske cars. He gets loose up the racetrack. He and Ryan Newman go hard to the outside wall, then Park spins around in front of the field. Luckily, no one hits him, but Park out of the race after starting on pole early on. So it's a tough break for Steve Park after starting on the pole for the All Club race. And then follows it up with a 43rd place finish here at Richmond as he wrecks himself early on in the race. He goes too hard to turn 1 and nails the outside wall hard. And after this race, Steve Park is let go by DEI. However, it is for reasons that really wasn't because of his performance on the racetrack. Later on in the race, some contact between Jeff Green and Kevin Harvick, 2 teammates, lead to angry Jeff Green interviews. Here's one of them.
Jeff, you had a great run going. We saw you talking to Todd Barrier. What did you guys talk about?
Todd's a crew chief on the 29, and Kevin spun me out. Ward hit the 12 getting into 1, but, man, that wreck was over. We didn't make any contact. Kevin spun me out. We're supposed to be teammates, but it doesn't seem that way right now.
So with Jeff Green's comments, he gets let go from RCR. DEI picks him up and gives RCR Steve Park his first race with RCR. He spins the car out in the Coca-Cola 600. Coming off turn 2, he's right there at 30, spins around. But another comment that Jeff Green made about RCR was that at points, it feels like there's only 1 RCR car instead of 3, so there was some tension between Kevin Harvick and Jeff Green especially, so Green gets let go. Park moves to RCR, and his first race for RCR are just not good at all. Bad results right here at Michigan. You see into turn 1, just gets really high up the racetrack and spins around. And the number 30, he doesn't hit anything. No one hits him, but it's just some miserable few races. His first 3 races for RCR just pretty miserable. He's right there, gets out of the groove and just spins the car around. In fact, joining RCR, he goes to Charlotte where he gets 27th, 32nd at Dover, 35th at Pocono, 27th at Michigan here, and then it just keeps on, counting down for him. So right there, the spin at Michigan. Then we go on to Sonoma, where more bad stuff happens, as in turn number 7, he runs into the 0 of Jack Sprague, and it brings out a full course caution. So heavy damage to the front end of the 30 AOL Chevrolet, and Park just sitting there and ends up retiring due to this crash. Pretty heavy front end damage. Right here, Kyle Petty gets spun in turn 7. He's up out of the way, and then right here, I don't know what Petty was really thinking here, but he pulls out across the track and right in front of Jack Sprague and gets Steve Park as well. Park rebounds at Daytona by winning the pole for the Pepsi 400.
Budweiser, the official beer of NASCAR, is proud to sponsor the Bud Pole Award given to the fastest qualifier in each NASCAR Winston Cup race. This week, Steve Park picked up his first Daytona Bud Pole.
And that was actually the 30 car's second pole of the season. And right here, in the big one, Steve Park is one of them involved in car number 30. So Park, his bad luck continues with these super speedway races, just no luck. And right there you see Kurt Busch is sideways in front. Park tries to go to the middle, tries to get up high, but as Robbie Gordon gets hit into the crash, it turns his car to the right, and he comes right up across of Steve Park's path, and nowhere for the 30 go. Gets sandwiched into the wall by the 0-1 right there, along with the 31 and others. So Park, bad day continues here at Daytona, and that from a 41st place finish at Sonoma to now a 39th place finish here at Daytona because of the crash, and then another bad race next at Chicagoland. We'll get to that in just a little bit because he's also involved in another crash there. But another look at this Daytona big one, as Kurt Busch just kind of running by himself, single file down the bottom lane, just loses his car through 1 and 2, gets sideways down to the apron, and then when trying to correct, he can't, he spins around. Right there, that's where Robbie Gordon tries to slow down, he gets hit up into the crash with Steve Park, who has nowhere to go, and he gets sandwiched into the wall with a few others. You'll see from this angle, once again, we'll see Steve Park coming towards the outside. There he is in the 30, as the 0-1 kind of comes up and crowds the 30 into the wall. So Steve Park, heavy damage there in the big one in the Pepsi 400. And then Chicagoland, as they go 3 wide with Mark Martin bouncing off a few drivers. Jai Benson gets down onto the apron, and then comes back up against Bobby Labonte, who gets sent into a wicked spin. And you'll see down the bottom, the number 30, Steve Park, gets sideways. He actually spins around in this crash. He doesn't really make contact, but it leads to a 26th place finish. See right there, Park sideways. So for Steve, It's just a horrible start to his career at Richard Childress Racing. He's involved in crash after crash and just bad race after bad race. His best finish at this point with RCR was a 26th here at Chicagoland, but he actually backs it up with a decent finish here at Loudon. So some fuel mileage at the end sets the third team up well. MEC doesn't show this, but you see Park right here just by Dale Jarrett. There's Jarrett coming to the start-finish line. Park actually gets 8th in this race. There he is coming off turn 4. And then right here at Michigan, he backs it up with a 5th place finish as he beats his teammate Robbie Gordon to the start-finish line. And then at Bristol, he's involved in the first caution of the race on lap number 6 as he wrecks down the front stretch with Kyle Petty, Todd Bodine, and others. And the ironic part about this crash is the car that actually spun him to start the crash. It is his former ride at DEI, the one of Jeff Green, that ends up spinning the 30 of Steve Park around and gets Park his early damage. So he gets the 8th at Loudon, moves on to a 25th at Pocono, a 15th at Indy, a 26th at Watkins Glen, then that 5th at Michigan, and now here at Bristol, he ends up wrecked and in the 29th position. And then we move on. Don't show Darlington, he's 20th in that race. So he's starting to pick up a little bit better results, kind of, that 8th, that 5th, that 15th, the 20th. So some top 20s, but it's still not like he used to be before his injury in 2001. And then, of course, we head to Richmond, race number 26. He's involved in the crash down the backstretch and actually leads Alan Bester to this funny quote about how Steve Park's car looks.
Instant messenger note to Steve Park. Your race car's a mess. There's a worm. A worm in the system.
So down the backstretch, Park involved in a crash with a few others like Dave Blaney and Dale Jarrett. You'll see Bill Elliott come spinning in after contact from Johnny Sauter. So Park heavy damage there in the 30. Once again, another torn-up race car. 2002 was the first season we did. He had a ton of torn-up race cars there, and then we move on to 2003. The season after, he gets a ton more torn-up race cars. For Steve Park, it is a 31st place finish here at Richmond, 34th at Loudon, a 26th at Dover, a 22nd at Kansas. And I mean, it's just a horrible stretch of the season for Steve Park. And to make matters worse, at Talladega, he ends up DNQing from the race, failing to qualify in the EA Sports 500 at Talladega.
That 30 car on the pole for 2 restrictor plate races this year goes home on the 4th one.
And then at Atlanta, he's involved in a heavy crash in turns 1 and 2 as he's battling with Ken Schrader for a position. You can see the hard damage to Steve Park's car right there. You'll see kind of here that he ends up having some sort of issue, either tire or some sort of part breaking, as there were kind of some sparks leading up and the car just turned dead to the right. So for Steve Park, the final 10 races of the season, 31st at Richmond, 34th at Loudon, 26th at Dover, 22nd at Kansas, 36th at Charlotte, a 12th at Martinsville, one of his better races of the season. Atlanta gets a 36th. At Phoenix is a 39th. He's involved in a crash, as we'll see here. Rockingham a 34th, and Homestead a 19th place finish. So not much to cheer about for Steve Park here as he's involved in a crash at Phoenix. And this will be the final race we cover as nothing much happened at Homestead. You'll see right here from the replay as Park just kind of gets loose on the top side and nails the outside wall hard with the front end of the car, and some pretty heavy damage to the front end as well. So that is number 4 for Steve Park's career. We got the last 2 seasons out of the way. We still have 1999, 2000, and 2001 left. So I'll see you guys for those 3 parts of the series.